You know what really pisses me off about Noah's Ark? Now, it's not the fact that Noah somehow managed to communicate with 2 of every single animal, just 2 of them, in the entire world, and got them to be in the same place at the same time, which would take an unreasonable amount of coordination. It's not the fact that even though there were lions on the ark and antelope on the ark and no food on the ark, all the lions and all the antelope managed to make it off the ark. And remember, Noah didn't bring a spare. What pisses me off about Noah's Ark is that after the genocide, God decides to send a rainbow to apologize, as if that makes us totally cool. And that's abusive behavior. You can't just do something that awful and then apologize and be like, well, I think we both sort of had our mess ups. I think we share the blame here. No. Not cool, guy. My mom raised me on Judaism, and my dad raised me on logic. As you can imagine, by the time I was 15, those identities were very much at odds with each other. I started to ask my mom a lot of questions. And you have to understand that the Jewish faith is very understanding of questions. It's a patient, gentle, scholarly faith. It wants you to inquire. It wants you to learn. But my mom, who just got off an 8-hour shift and then had to make dinner for her 3 kids, was not so patient. So I would ask her things like, why did men and women have to sit on opposite sides of the shul? Shul is synagogue, for those uninitiated. Or, why does God care what kind of food we eat? What about Yom Kippur? That's a weird holiday. It's one where God sort of malevolently looms over you, deciding on that day who's going to live and who's going to die that year and writing it down in a book. And before we go thinking that Judaism's just some sort of lame duck religion, let's not forget that this entire month is dedicated to the birthday of some schmuck born in April. And after barraging my mother with these questions, she finally starts to snap and says, I swear to God, Connor, you're going to see the rabbi. She doesn't actually talk like that, but in my mind, that's like verbatim how she sounds. So the next day, I wind up in the car, driving to see the rabbi. She drops me off at the synagogue. I walk in, and Rabbi Silverman greets me, and I know what you're thinking when I say Rabbi Silverman, the tall hat and the long beard and the curly sideburns. You're exactly right, but I'm not happy about it. And we shake hands, and he says, Connor, how are you doing today? He calls me Connor instead of Chaim, my Hebrew name, which he calls most of the congregation. And Chaim means life, which is kind of ironic considering I am an unabashed nihilist. So we go into his office, and I'm not sure if you've ever been in a religious person's office when you're not religious, but it's really, really creepy. And there was a mezuzah on the door, and a lot of Hebrew sprawled out across the walls. And the funny thing about ancient Hebrew is that when it's sprawled out across the walls on really old tapestry, it looks like the Necronomicon. And we sit down, and Rabbi Silverman says, so, your mother tells me that you've been struggling quite a bit with your faith. And this is very understandable at your age, but I'm here now. We can discuss for as long as you want to any questions you might have and try to quell these concerns. Finally, oh my God, someone who's willing to answer all of my questions. I think we should start with a prayer. Oh. See, I didn't feel like starting with a prayer because I wasn't sure if anyone was listening to my prayers, because I was starting to think that we were standing as humanity on the edge of an abyss that was so indifferent to us that it didn't even bother to look back at us because life is pain. But I agreed, and Rabbi Silverman handed me tzitzit. Tzitzit it's sort of like a smock, I guess, like a prayer apron. It's hard to explain to goyim, so you're just going to need to stay with me. And after the prayer, we got to talking, and I asked Rabbi Silverman, Rabbi, why aren't women allowed to read out of the Torah? And he said, well, the Torah is very specific on the roles of men and women. Now, yes, men read out of the Torah, which is a very important role, but women light the candles, they say the blessing over the light. The women provide maybe the most important tool in all of Judaism. And I said, Rabbi, why does God care what kind of meat I eat? And he responds, well, the thing about keeping kosher is that it's not all based on what we can prepare today. It's based on tradition, what we knew how to prepare thousands of years ago. See, by not eating pigs, that actually saved the Jewish people from most of the Black Plague. And I said, okay, Rabbi, but what about this? Don't you think it's a little impractical that the Torah says that all of humanity has started out from 2 people, no less than twice? And Rabbi Silverman said, well, the thing you need to understand about the Torah is that not everything in it is meant to be taken literally. Some stories are more allegorical. Now, I love this response because this is always the response that pious people give you to excuse the fact that all of these stories were written thousands of years ago before we had actual science, which we have now, to prove that some of them are total crap. And it seems to me like if God is omnipotent, he would have the foresight to know that maybe a persuasive essay would be better than prose given the long period of time. I mean, he's God, right? Connor, the thing that you need to understand is that faith, well, it may seem sometimes very difficult to believe in. It's gotten the Jews through so many things. Faith brought us through the desert. Now, faith delivered us from the Holocaust. And faith eventually brought us to Israel. And while it may seem difficult now, you have to understand that to some people, faith is the most real thing. And I thought, what a bunch of fakakta. You believe this guy? And I'm like, Jesus Christ, dude. How many times have you delivered that line in the exact same way? So I left the synagogue. Pretty sure that I wasn't Jewish anymore. And I got into my mom's car and she said, so what did you and the rabbi talk about? Nothing. Well, did he answer most of your questions? Not really. I swear to God, Connor. See, we have this hole inside of us, this void that we always try to fill with prayer or God or faith. And I think that we're just supposed to have a hole inside of us to remind us that we are sitting on the precipice of utter nothingness. There is no destiny. There is no fate. Nothing is predetermined. But in that, you don't have to do anything. Nothing is making you, nothing is controlling you. And I, personally, I'm going to choose freedom over God every time.